There's no news like old news. This popped into my head the other day. A video that I'd seen about someone who was unbeknownst to me at the time, but I remembered them saying that all they needed to go to war with Iran was the right false flag, essentially. And I went and tracked down the footage of him saying it, and I looked him up and the organization and a couple things, so this will have a little bit more detail than just watching the video. So at any rate, it's Patrick Clawson who is the speaker. He is currently speaking and working with the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. He's an economist by trade and has worked with the National Defense University, Foreign Policy Research Institute, the IMF, and the World Bank, actually. At least that's what I've read elsewhere. I just thought that this would be a little bit more uh, pragmatic to just look at this one page. He's also a Morningstar Senior Fellow. And a Morningstar Senior Fellow means that he is the top of a church called the Morningstar Church. And what it is a Baptist evangelical group, essentially Zionist Christians who believe that Israel 1948 is the beginning of prophecy fulfillment, and it won't be long before Jesus comes back. And essentially, they're willing to support all of the things that happen prophetically so that the Antichrist can come, and then Jesus can come afterwards. So they donate their money and their support and their votes to anybody that they feel will make that happen for them. They care about Jesus more than they care about the politician, in a sense, but they're willing to support the politicians involved in order to get Jesus back. It's also interesting to note that it's the Morning Star fellowship, and Morning Star is associated with Lucifer typically, so that's kind of interesting. In regard to the Morning Star, it's kind of interesting to note that Master Mason Albert Pike says, Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give this the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning, it is he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerable blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls. Doubt it not. So, son of the morning, morning star. So that makes me curious with these guys, because I mean they're war hawks. You can't preach Christianity and loving your neighbor and then further war with other countries in the name of that. It's just as crooked as the Catholic Church, right? So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. They could very well have Masons within their ranks, possibly. So, at any rate, he's currently the head of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, which is an American pro-Israel think tank based in Washington, focused on foreign policy in the United States in the Near East. It was established in 1985 with the support of AIPAC and the funding of many AIPAC donors in order to provide higher quality research than AIPAC's publications. The Institute's main mission statement says that it seeks to advance a balanced and realistic understanding of American interests in the Middle East and to promote the policies that secure them. The Institute was described in 2008 as part of the core of the Israel lobby in the United States, a charge that Winnep denies. And so we will go down to who made that assertion. It was John Messerschmier, as well as Stephen Walt, University of Chicago political science advisor, and Stephen Walt was dean at the Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. And they describe it, the group as part of the core of the pro-Israeli lobby in the United States, discussing the group in their book written, The Israel Lobby in U.S. Foreign Policy. They write, although Winnep plays down its links to Israel and claims that it provides a balanced and realistic perspective on Middle East issues, this is not the case. In fact, Winnep is funded and run by individuals who are deeply committed to advancing Israel's agenda. Many of its personnel are genuine scholars or experienced former officials, but they are hardly neutral observers on the most Middle East issues, and there is little diversity of views within WINEP's ranks. It was also started by a former member of AIPAC. Notable current and former scholars include President George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush Jr., Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. Interesting to note that part of the board of advisors includes also Henry Kissinger, which I just did a video including some information with the other day, as he was just released from his way too long tenure at the Defense Department of the United States. So roughly speaking, that's kind of who we're looking at, the groups that we're looking at, the history of the man who is going to speak. And this is the video that I was thinking of the other day. This is old. This was September 21st in 2012. This statement was made. And it's roughly speaking him suggesting that there wouldn't really be anything wrong with false flagging to get into Iran.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Which leads me to conclude that if, in fact, compromise is not coming, that the traditional way of America gets to war is what would be best for U.S. interests. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor.
Which was absolutely avoidable, but the radio communications that were being requested were denied by Roosevelt, and the attack was allowed to proceed and draw them into the war. As he just stated himself, Mr. Clawson, he wanted to get into the war, had to wait until Pearl Harbor.
People might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode.
The Lusitania episode was the Germans owned most of the oceans around Europe, and they said, you send any ships into this water, no matter what it is, we're going to sink it. This is wartime. This is ours now. And so what did America do? It loaded up a civilian ship full of people, sent it out into the drink, had it sunk. Next day news, America's in the war.
Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall we had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode.
Oh, I don't recall exact details on the Gulf of Tonkin episode, although I do know it's disputed that it was even actually a thing.
We didn't go to war with Spain until the until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack.
To do exactly that thing that would cause the South Carolinians to attack.
So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war.
And the laughs around the room are because of this think tank and who they are. This isn't your regular government officials there. These are all people who have the vested interest. This is your deep snake, deep state, swamp. The one that makes the world tick, I guess. So at any rate, this cat comes on to talk about sanctions and how well they're working. Granted, this was 8 years ago, and I would say the sanctions have had some effect, as there's a lot of economic disparity going on now in Iran due to the sanctions. So we'll skip past all that because it's relatively boring, and I basically told you about probably all you need to know anyway. We need to finish off the false flag suggestions from Mr. Clawson.
Look, the sanctions are starting to bite on Iran's economy. And we are going to learn before too long how much priority the Supreme Leader places on that. And it is distinctly possible that he would be prepared to see Iran become North Korea. That may be a desirable model for him. I don't think it's a desirable model for the Iranian people at all. I don't think that's what they want. And I think he'd face a lot of resistance if he tried to push that idea through. But that is possible. I mean, this is a man who seems to place such high priority on revolutionary fervor. And we will find that out. I don't know. But I would just like to suggest that one can combine other means of pressure with sanctions. I mentioned that explosion on August 17th. We could step up the pressure. I mean, look, people, Iranian submarines periodically go down. Someday one of them might not come up. Who would know why? We can do a variety of things if we wish to increase the pressure. I'm not advocating that, but I'm just suggesting that this is not a either-or proposition. Of, it's just sanctions has to succeed or other things. We are in the game of using covert means against the Iranians. We could get nastier at that.
Now, this is, of course, because Iran does want to blow up Israel. They hate them. It's biblically in the Quran that they are Satan and that America is the great Satan and they must all be destroyed. Despite that, it's a weird game of playing cute politics when they're low and then maybe doing the odd missile attack when they're not. Despite that, there's been a lot of provocation going on lately towards Iran, who is connected to China, Venezuela, Russia, North Korea currently. And so we're potentially looking at a modern powder keg for this century, getting started a little bit late as far as it goes for matching year to year from last century. But that's the stuff that's going on potentially. That's what we could be looking at coming. It is the last country to fall out of the ones listed by General Wesley Clark, which I will be putting a video up for right away as well. And I should probably connect that to this actually. So at any rate, I thought that was interesting. I bet most people haven't seen that, or if they have, they probably don't remember it because it is absolutely floated into the annals of history and no one really talks about this little speech given by Mr. Clawson too much lately. So there's that video. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Peace out.